We're going to be taking a look at the data stepper, which is the Lite version of the debugger in TDI. Now the first thing I want to show you is that I've opened up the data collector view. If you've ever run EasyTL, you'll notice that this is actually open by default here. But I can get this same view in the full TDI development environment by going to Window, Show View, and then selecting Data Collector. We'll be debugging an assembly line, which starts off with a JDBC connector reading from a table. Then it does an LDAP lookup to find information about these people. In the case that no match is found, we end up in the onNoMatch hook, which then prints out a message to the log and then skips that entry. If that was successful, the lookup was successful, we go on to a branch which checks the mail or the mail attribute to make sure that it contains an @ symbol. If it doesn't, it's just a placeholder in the LDAP directory, in which case we remove the values. And finally, down here in the output connector, we're going to write to a file, and during the output mapping, we're going to be creating a new mail address for everybody. We start the debugger by pressing the debugger button. And by default, whenever you debug an assembly line for the first time, you get the data stepper. You can switch to the full debugger by pressing this button. We'll be covering that in a separate video. The data stepper gives you an overview or an outline of your assembly line, and it provides an area where the contents of the work entry are shown. The middle section gives us stepper buttons for stepping from one connector to the next, continue to run until completion, stop, and then show hide to determine which of these con grids are to be shown. The con grids provide us information about what is in the con entry for each connector. So for input connectors, this is the data that's just been read from the source before any input mapping is done. In the case of our output connector, this will be the result of our output map before the write operation. We also get the log down here, and we get our JavaScript evaluation line, where we can interactively run snippets of JavaScript on the running server. Now to start my assembly line, I can press the next button, and that will launch the assembly line and bring us into the first connector. We can see the location here, as well as here in the con grids. If I press next again, it'll proceed to the next connector, unless, of course, there is no match, which means no information is read into the con entry, and our hook, the onNoMatch hook, sends us back to the first connector, which is exactly what happened. We got our message, not found in LDAP, and that entry was skipped, so we haven't gotten this far yet. You'll also notice that there is a Step 2 button for each one of these con grids. So if I press this one here for the LDAP, then it will continue to cycle through until we actually manage to find a match. We've actually skipped two additional entries before we got this far. Let me just get back to a fuller view by double-clicking on this tab. And now we can watch what happens in the data collector. As we reach our output connector, we perform the write operation. The data collector begins to collect the information as it is being transferred out of the assembly line. I could, of course, press continue and run this until completion. And I can grab the information here in my data collector, copy it, and then paste that into an email or a file because it's already formatted in CSV. So it's ready to import into Excel or into some other system that can accept CSV import. And that's the data stepper in a nutshell.